When I left Google, I told my boss that I was going to be writing. I decided I was going to go write. And he said, you can always come back. That's when I was like, wait, it's a bigger risk to stay than it is to go. I was able to do a Netflix special. I was able to turn my books into pilots. And as any good story, like all of this amazing things are happening for me. And then at the same time, I was going through a divorce. A lot of times your dreams start to come true and your partner or your friends, they don't like the new you or they want you to not change. I feel like in any relationship, being able to be excited for that change and not be threatened by it and be with someone who is going to be excited for you. I realized in my marriage, I didn't look under the hood. There are a lot of red flags, and red flags are a funny joke, but they're also real, that I ignored because I just wanted to get married. I was 35 and I had to do the thing. And so that was my bad. I said, I'll love you, I'll be with you forever. But the thing is, did I really know myself? Did I really take the time to figure out what I actually wanted and who I was? No, you don't actually have to work in tech or be a lawyer. You can create your own career and do what you love. When you out there listening, think about what is the thing that you could see yourself doing until you're 80? What is that thing? And sometimes it's a bigger risk to get addicted to that comfort than it is to just take a chance.
I was going to ask you, are you high as hell right now? Because in every chapter of your book, it starts with, I was high as hell. I was doing X, Y, and Z. So I don't know. You think?
Yeah, I have stopped getting high because I have just like, actually it's 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And
congratulations. That's big.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a big deal. But sadly, while I was writing the book, well, actually not while I was writing the book, but a lot of the events that took place during, and it's funny because I had such a epic year in 2020, and I joked that at the pace that I was going with my career, that I would be in rehab by the end of the year, because that's the trajectory of like most people in entertainment, or a lot of people. So I didn't end up in rehab, but I did end up like really sort of, I started taking edibles when I was 42. It was really late in life, especially for a Jamaican, and just really loved it. Like I tapped into a different part of my mind that I had never tapped into before. And I got kind of like I started to get to a point where I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being high more than I enjoyed being not high. And then I realized that wasn't such a great situation. And also a lot of people who read the book are like, I can't understand what you're saying. So I'm like, maybe being high a lot wasn't the best time to write a book. But hey, like I say, if you are also high when you read it, it will be better. You'll be able to understand it.
This is not the same thing, but I started drinking coffee when I was around 40, like in my early 40s. That's when I started drinking coffee. But
yeah, that's not the same thing at all.
But I drink, but it's something, it doesn't have the same impact, but it's something that I think a lot of people don't want to be doing, if that makes any sense. And
coffee?
Yeah, it's like a lot of people complain, I have too many coffees, but I never really drank it because I feel like I needed it. I just drank it because I like the taste of nut milk flavor coffee. So it's not even coffee that I like. I just like, I would get like the almond milk or the oat milk.
Yeah, please call it that. I don't know why, but nut milk doesn't sound good. I really don't like it. But say oat milk, say almond milk, that's fine. But also I think people love coffee. People love drinking coffee. People are obsessed with coffee. Gen Z is obsessed with coffee.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think you're onto something there.
But I'm in a different category because I don't need the coffee. That's the thing.
I don't need it either. I have an espresso. I have it at 11:30 at night sometimes. It doesn't have any effect on me. I just like the taste of it.
I could drink coffee any time of day. It's totally fine. But you started with gummies, right? You started with edibles.
Yeah, edibles.
So what made you in your 40s start to say, you know what? Pass me one of those gummies. Was it, what were you experiencing at the time? You're a long time meditator at this point. That's how you and I first met, is back in, I don't know what year that was, probably like 2013 or 14 or something.
Yeah, it was around then, 10 years ago almost. Yeah, As you know, I do stand-up comedy, and my goal, my holy grail of stand-up comedy is being yourself on stage, being as relaxed on stage as you are in everyday situations. And I've struggled with this my whole life. One day I'll get there. I've gotten there like bits and pieces here and there, but never like a consistent. And I think that that was my initial thing with it, was like, will this help me be that relaxed on stage? And it does not. It's terrible for stage. It's terrible for performance. I get very anxious. It's a bad situation, but I did really find that I looked at things differently. I noticed things differently. I write in the book, like I saw sort of like these metaphors, like one of my favorite stories from the book was, my sister, Rachel, she's on the spectrum, and it's always been, something that, was kind of a distance between us. And we're very close in age, but we look at things completely differently. And I don't know. I was hanging out with my mom and my sister, and we were looking out the window, and there was this like mama goose with these baby geese behind her. And one of the baby geese like fell behind. And my sister Rachel was very concerned about this goose that was falling behind. And then the mama goose went back to help the baby goose that had fallen behind. And my mom said, "See, Rachel, that mama goose would never leave her." And because I think normally if I wasn't high, I'd be like, "Oh, that was a nice thing to say." Because I was high, I would like, it was this huge metaphor of just, oh my gosh, like my mom is telling my sister that it doesn't matter. Like she's never going to be left behind. My mom was telling me that I was never going to be left behind. It was like this whole, and like emotional moment that I had because I was high. And so like I had a lot of moments like that. That I sort of got addicted to. Like I got addicted to seeing what was behind or what was underneath what everyone was saying, even if a lot of times it wasn't right. I just kind of got sort of addicted to that.
Well, I think also maybe it's also, I mean, that's not something you started doing when you started using those substances. I mean, it sounds like you've been someone who is who enjoys, I don't know, what is there a word for people who enjoy just observing life and just like thinking about
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes people call it like being stuck in your head, you know?
I'm sure there's like a fancy Latin term for this that maybe people listening to this can leave in a comment somewhere, but
Yeah. But I love
'cause
yeah.
I can identify. I felt that way before. My medium was more art than journaling, but you put some of your journal entries in your book, and I love the way you journal because it's storytelling. It's not like stream of consciousness all over the place. It's very like, let's set the scene. Let's talk about what's happening inside. Let's talk about what I'm seeing on the outside. So that one day when I reflect back on this, I'm going to be able to have context to what I was talking about. And
Yeah.
the books that I read from authors who are avid journalers, they kind of follow the same pattern. They're very detailed, and it makes someone like me who doesn't journal on a regular basis always wonder, like, how do they remember these little details? But you kind of
Mm.
train yourself to do that over time, which is pretty spectacular.
And there's a self-importance there as well. When I look at my journals that I was writing when I was 13, I felt like I knew for some reason that this would be important. And I
Mhm.
don't know why, but I was just like, no, I need to write this down. I had this, a lot of people are just like, well, what am I going to write? What am I going to say? Who cares? And I never had that. I was always like, no, this needs to be written down. Needs to be recorded. So I noticed that with my writing as well. And maybe that's how I live my life, is everything is sort of has this importance to it every day, every moment.
Well, there's this sort of Anne Frank nature to it as well, where you're really talking about larger society, like you're making observations about
Yeah.
things outside of yourself that maybe other 13-year-olds aren't really concerning themselves with.
Yeah, I was so deep. I don't know if I auditioned for, Mortified.
Mm-mm.
Mortified is this show where people read their journals from when they were little. And
Mm.
so people get up and read their journals. And I auditioned for it and I was rejected because I was too self-aware. They said my journals were too self-aware, like I was too aware that there was an audience,
Mhm.
And so, and also the other thing I noticed too is that, I noticed this with my sister, which is that she talks to herself out loud and I would get annoyed with it. But then I realized, oh, I talk to myself too, but there's a voice inside my head. I don't move my lips. I don't make a sound out loud, but I have a voice that I can hear very clearly. And it's my voice and it's inside my head. And I realized very recently, not everyone has this. Like if I tell you to say the word pineapple without moving your lips or saying anything, do you hear it in your head?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not everybody does. And I think there is a difference there, but like I have this voice, and maybe part of that I needed to get down. I needed to write it down because it was telling me stuff.
That's interesting. I've never considered that other people don't have. I've always had that voice as well, but I just thought everybody had it.
I thought so too. I thought so too. But I asked my sister Rachel, I was like, what does it feel like at night when you go to sleep? Is it just black? Is it just dark and quiet? And she said yes.
Mm.
And I was like, that sounds very peaceful because that's not what it's like
Which
for
one
me.
of your sisters? Which one of your sisters would steal your journal and for like a couple of days?
Charmaine, my older sister Charmaine, who is a nurse, she stole my journal. Yeah.
And why would she do that again?
Oh gosh.
Would she read it and then tell and snitch or?
Well, I have Charmaine was born with Treacher-Collins syndrome. So she looked very different. It's a craniofacial difference. It's a birth defect. And you can't imagine how hard middle school and high school must have been for her. And to me, perhaps she was sort of living vicariously through having, like, what was it like to just be a normal kid going through school?
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
That's what I mean, at the time I was like, God damn it, why is she leave my stuff alone? But I would steal her clothes. So I think sisters you have three brothers. Like you guys must have stolen each other's stuff, gone through each other's stuff.
A little bit. Yeah. That's interesting.
Hey, so a lot of you all have been reaching out with guest suggestions. Like, you should interview President Obama. You should interview Oprah Winfrey. And look, I'm definitely sending out invitations to people like that all the time, but something that you can do right now to help make it easier for those kinds of guests to say yes to my invitation is to subscribe to my channel. That's why you always hear podcasters like me saying, please subscribe to this channel. I'm just being honest. So if you could just hit the subscribe button right now, that's literally the best way that you can help me get you bigger guests on this show. All right. Thank you so much in advance for that. And back to the show.
Well, listen, let's fill the audience in because they're probably like, what book? What are we talking about? We're making reference to the book Foolish, written by Sarah Cooper, who's been on my podcast before. She was on episode number 37 originally. And the whole shtick with my podcast is I like to tell the backstory and the motivations and understand how people became who they are to create whatever platform they've created. And I'm not going to do that again with you because we've already documented that in this on this podcast. But I do want to, for those people who haven't listened to the first episode, I want to do a snapshot version of your backstory leading up to today. So if you wouldn't mind, Sarah, just kind of taking us through whatever you consider to be the highlights of your backstory.
Okay. Well, I was born a small Blackish child in Jamaica, and my family moved here in 1980 when I was 3. Moved to Rockville, Maryland, and the youngest of 4. older brother, George, Charmaine, and Rachel. And always loved performing, just felt sort of like, I don't know, I felt it was my duty and my family to make everybody laugh and to make everybody feel good. And so that was sort of my role in my family. And it was my role in school. I was kind of a clown and really wanted to do some kind of performance. I wanted to sing. And then turns out I couldn't sing. And then I wanted to act. And my parents were very pragmatic and they're like, you got to do business. So I got an economics degree. I hated that. So then I went into digital design at Georgia Tech. And then I was working in an ad agency that I worked in tech for a while. I found stand-up comedy around age 32 and started writing my own material. And really merged comedy and the corporate world with an article called 10 Tricks to Appear Smart Meetings. And that went viral. And that's kind of what I consider sort of the start of my career in terms of comedy. And wrote 100 Tricks to Appear Smart Meetings, which is, I don't know when this is coming out, but people love that as a white elephant gift at work. And then I wrote How to Be Successful Without Hurting Men's Feelings. And then I was about to go back to tech when in 2020, I was inspired to start lip syncing the president. And that kind of changed my life. And I really, really, really was able to, I was able to do a Netflix special. I was able to turn my books into pilots. And, as any as any good story, all of this amazing things are happening for me. And then at the same time, I was going through a divorce from my husband who I had met at Google when I was working there. So the past 3 years from 2020 to 2023 have just been really a huge adjustment of, okay, now I have an agent now. I have, this career that I'm trying to build. I love storytelling. I've always wanted to, write a TV show, write a movie. I still want to do all of those things. And, in 2022, I got this book deal to write a memoir. And so I wrote this memoir called Foolish, Tales of Assimilation, Determination, and Humiliation. And, I will be rewriting it because I wrote it high.
Well, okay. So that's interesting. That's interesting. Are you not serious about that? You're not going to rewrite it?
I am. I've decided it's going to be a trilogy. It's going to be Foolish, Foolisher, and then Foolishest. Because I truly believe in the structure of the book. I truly believe in the structure. I believe in what I was trying to say, but I think a lot of it's my stand-up comedy, and a lot of it, I don't know if it really translated to the page as well. I'm really not doing a good job of selling my book. It's a great book. It's the best book ever. Go buy it. That's what I should say.
What does that mean? Or what was the intention behind assimilation, humiliation, determination?
Well, the basis was really family. The first one, assimilation. So when we moved here, my parents very interested in success, and as Jamaicans coming here, we moved up every time we moved, different house, bigger house, wider neighborhood. It's all about this sort of proximity to whiteness and this proximity to success and what is successful, and looking at success as what has worked before. So the idea that I would be I want to be an actress was insane to them. It was what? No. And so to please them, I sort of did this. I worked in tech. I did the thing that everybody wants to do that. You're making money. You got a 6-figure salary, all of that. Get married, try to have kids, buy a house. That was the assimilation. And so I was doing all of those things based on what my parents and what capitalism, tells you to do. So that was the first part. And I think that was sort of the baby part of me, the subconscious part of me, just following sort of rules. And then determination is about, who am I really? Like, you know, there were, you know, it's a little ridiculous, but I did spend a while talking about my favorite colors. And although that chapter is pretty boring, I will say that these questions I didn't ask myself. I didn't ask myself, what do I like? Who am I? What music do I like? Like my ex-husband, he chose all our art. He chose everything. Like I was just put together based on everything that was popular in society. I wasn't me. And I didn't take the time to figure out me and who I really was and what I really liked. I was just thinking about this room in my apartment, which I love. And it took me years to figure out what to do with this room. And I was like, put a desk in it and make it an office because I love work and I love what I do and I want to be doing it as much as possible. So like it took me years to just figure that out. And so asking myself those questions, determining who I really am, that's that second part. And then the last part, humiliation, is, about taking these chances that I took in my life, trying to sing, trying to act, trying to do stand-up comedy, and how humiliating and terrifying and how foolish you feel when you really put yourself out there, as many times and as many different crazy ways as I have.
And it's very, very transparent vignettes from different aspects of your life that I think a lot of people can relate to. At least I could relate to a lot of the stories in your book. I'm curious though, who when you were writing, who was the audience that you had in mind? Like who did you see reading this book and putting it down and going, yeah, I can fit that.
Everybody, obviously. I thought the world was going to be like, oh my God, this is a revelation, but mainly women who have sort of, put aside their own desires and thoughts and feelings to live this fantasy that's not even their own fantasy. It's a societal dream that they've bought into. I think that my hope and my dream was to sort of say, hey, this is how I stopped being a robot, and you can stop being a robot too. That's kind of what I was going for. And that, the first part, assimilation, is like sort of a rejection of being a white, and the second part is a lot of sex, and I did not a lot of sex, but I do discuss sex. I'm not great at discussing sex, but thinking about sex not as like, oh, you were made to have babies, but like, no, actually sex can be something that you just enjoy. It's not just for the man, it can be something for you as well. And then that third part of just like, no, you don't actually have to work in tech or go be a lawyer. You can create your own career and do what you love. So those are kind of what I was hoping that people who feel sort of stuck, or people who feel like they are just following a script, could see how I've sort of broken that script or created my own different script.
Was it therapeutic for you? Because some of the things you put in the book are so transparent. I know for myself, when I'm doing my writing and I think to myself, I don't know if I want my parents reading
Yeah.
this. How did you sort of navigate all of that as an author?
I don't think my parents are too
happy. Because you described
happy.
your first time having sex and, being the office, you'd slept with multiple people in your office and all these kinds of things.
I only slept with like 2 people in my office. I love the question, was it therapeutic for you? Because I get so defensive. I'm like, when people ask that, it's like, did you at least get something out of this? Because nobody else did. No, it was therapeutic. And actually, when you asked me, who did you write this for at first, my first thought was I wrote it for myself. And so, yeah, it was therapeutic. And there were a lot of things where I was just like, I love this story. There's so many stories that I just love so much. And I was just excited to tell them. So yeah.
Mhm. And that's I think that's perfect. Like
Yeah.
I think that's why we should write. And the more specific we are, usually the more universal
Yeah.
our storytelling becomes. And the more kind of guarded we are. And again, this is from my own experience, trying to make everything fit, trying not to offend anyone, trying to please my parents or
Yeah.
anyone else who would read it. It just comes off as flat, and there's no impact with it. And it's not that you have to try to be impactful. You just be honest, just tell your truth. And then other people are like, oh my God, yes, I experienced that too.
Yeah.
I tried to make a relationship work with someone and all they wanted to do was hook up with me. And we've all had
Yeah.
that experience.
Haven't we?
We've all been there.
Relatable AF.
Yeah. But some of the themes that really I thought were very inspiring were just all the stories about um how you bet on yourself. And then also and I put in that category you leaving your relationships, which is a very difficult thing to do, in spite of the fact that you guys are arguing all the time, and there's all these obvious issues. So, talk about you having sort of a dream job at these major tech companies, Yahoo and Google, and then deciding, yeah, this is great, but there are other things that I want to do. And then having to go back a year later, you're broke, and having to go back and get another job, and then quitting that one. And just, I guess, talk a little bit about that process, because, and now who I'd like for you to talk to are the people out there who are like you, young women, perhaps even young men who have on paper, they look successful. They look great. Their whole family is probably bragging about them at church, but they don't feel like this is where they're supposed to be. And they're journaling and they're writing jokes or telling stories or doing something.
Yeah.
And what was it that gave you the courage to say, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. Because we all have that conversation. I want to do it, but very few of us say I'm going to do it and then actually do it.
Yeah. I mean, I have to, give it up to my family as much as they, put a lot of pressure on me to not make mistakes and do the right thing. I will say that they've always said, anytime you need, you can come home. And they've always said that. You always have a room here. You always have a home here. And so having that, honestly, I think helped me take a lot of risks. As much as they were like, you're going to leave Google, or like, you're going to leave Yahoo, as much as they were like that, they were also like pretty uh, open to giving me that net to fall into. If I was
And you
to
had to
move
take
on.
them up on it a couple of times in your 40s.
I realized, and I didn't put this in the book, but I realized I'd taken them up on it 3 times in my life. And it was always after a breakup. I always had to move back in with my parents after breaking up with a guy at 21, at 30, and at 42. So I've done it in every decade. I've taken them, and I hope, knock on wood, I never have to take them up on it again, but I might, who knows? And when I left Google, I told my boss that I was going to be writing. I decided I was going to go write, and he said, well, the first thing he was like, "Do you have a book deal?" And I was like, "No." And that was what gave me the idea to have a book deal. I was like, "Well, maybe I should try to get a book deal." But then the other thing he said was, you can always come back. And that's kind of when I was like, wait, it's a bigger risk to stay than it is to go, because like, going, I can always come back. Staying and being comfortable and kind of I just knew that I just didn't see myself for the rest of my life designing websites and designing interfaces. I just didn't see, but I knew with writing, I could see myself doing this when I'm 80. I could see myself doing this on my deathbed. I could see myself writing in a journal as my last thing that I do. So for me, that I just had to follow that. And, when you out there listening, think about what is the thing that you could see yourself doing until you're 80? What is that thing? And sometimes it's a bigger risk to get addicted to that comfort than it is to just take a chance.
You mentioned designing interfaces, and you took a bet on yourself to become a comedian. And I'm a big believer that all of the experiences that we have in life, no matter how random, will end up coming into play at some point when we do start to find our purpose.
Yes.
And as a self-aware person, I'm curious to know what elements of interface design translated into comedy.
Um, Empathy, mainly empathy, and thinking about who's looking at this, who's viewing it, who's using it, and what do they want? What do they want to hear? What do they want to see? What's the next thing that they think? I love comedy where it feels like they know exactly what I'm thinking. They say something, they know what my response is going to be. They respond to that response before I've even said it. And so that sort of empathy definitely plays into comedy, to writing. You've written 2 books, you know that. You're really good at like thinking about what people. I remember when you used to do you did a daily sort of inspirational quote, right?
Daily dose of inspiration. Yeah, I'm still doing it.
Daily. Oh, you're still doing it.
7
Okay.
years now, right?
Oh my God, you're still doing it.
Mhm.
Oh my God. That was incredible for me. Like every morning waking up to that, I think that I felt like sometimes you were inside my head. And it was such a good feeling to know that I wasn't alone. And also, I hate the internet sometimes. And then things like that make me love the internet because it's one step ahead of me sometimes in a good way. So I think empathy definitely played into that. But in a lot of ways a lot of ways it was bad because there's such a dependence on data and like doing what works. And I see some comedians who like have worked in tech before, like creating spreadsheets of their jokes and like writing down the numbers of laughs and thinking about things in a very like methodical way. And I hate that shit so much. I hate it so much.
Mm.
There's so much more benefit to feeling, to being on stage and feeling than there is to thinking, okay, this worked before. Let me say it like this. Let me pause for the same amount of seconds. Like, oh, gross. So that stuff, I kind of had to throw away. That perfectionism, that methodical like tracking of things, I had to throw that stuff away.
When you were anonymous, Sarah Cooper, going to the pizza store to do open mic night,
The
and those
pizza
kinds
store.
yeah, pizza restaurant, and those kinds of gigs, what were some of the highlights that stand out to you now as, someone who's had, exposure to Hollywood and all of that? Like what can you reflect back on now and go, you know what, that was a really cool moment when that happened?
Well, I just remember, performing for 2 people at a comedy club at like midnight in Astoria. And,
And
2 more
were you
people.
paying to be there?
I mean, if you looked at the fact that I wasn't being paid and it cost so much money to get there, yeah, definitely. I was paying to be there. And, 2 other people would show up and I'd be like, oh, my audience just doubled, and then I was talking to 4 people and it was great. And then in 2020, when all I wanted was a late night set. That's all I wanted in life, was to get on the late night. And in 2020, I finally got to guest host Jimmy Kimmel, but it was during a pandemic. And so there was no audience. It was for 2 people. Who was doing it for 2 people in a room? So the fact that experience of performing for 2 people when I was had no success was very much prepared me for performing for 2 people when I was sort of at the height of my success in that year. That was pretty cool. But it's like those moments of humility, like Mark Normand is one of my favorite comedians, and he had just done the Tonight Show. And then a week later, I was watching him perform in a bar in a basement while a group of women were having a birthday party and barely paying attention to him. And a week earlier, he was on the Tonight Show. And so it's just this weird, you could be up here one second, literally one day, and the next day you are back down, and then you could be up again. And it's just like, I don't know. It's kind of a mirror of life, and it's a test of yourself to be able to stay as even and as dedicated as you can, no matter what response you're getting.
Yeah. And you first took the leap, I believe, in 2013 or something like that?
14. Yeah.
2014. And so 6 years later, you have this sort of randomly viral
Yeah.
TikTok video. But in between 2014 and 2020, how if you had to say how many times you thought about quitting and going back to sort of a conventional life, what would you say?
I mean, I was, I got married in 2015. We tried to have kids. If that had worked out, I would have been a mom. I think I would have probably given up at that point. I I was just like kind of trucking along, and my ex-husband was really great about, being the breadwinner and, making the money, and that was really helpful. Um so I thought about it a lot during that first year and a little bit less during the second year. And then you get to a point where you're like, you're freelancing. So I'm like I still have my toe in a little bit so that I can stay sharp and maybe go back at any time. So I feel like I thought about it so much during that first like 18 months and then a little bit less. And then around 2019, when it really felt like nothing was working and I really questioned whether or not, uh, you know, mostly I was missing a community, because when you are working for yourself by yourself and you're a writer, it's such a lonely experience actually. And that's the thing that I really missed about Google. It wasn't the work, it was the people, it was the place to go. It was that sort of support system of people to talk to and relate to. And in 2019, when I was thinking about going back, it wasn't so much that I needed the money. It was more like, oh, I'm 41, 42, and who do I talk to? Where are my friends? What do who am I relating to on a daily basis? And so when I was thinking about going back then, it was really about that. Where's my 401k? Like who's gonna be there when I'm 60 and what does retirement look like? When you're 40, you start thinking about those things. Your parents start getting older. So that's really what it was about is that.
Yeah, I heard, Matt Rife, right? The comedian Matt Rife.
Yeah.
His story, he said before, I think a couple years ago, he was making like $30,000 as a comedian and just not really getting traction at all. And then he goes to this comedy festival that he pays to attend, and they weren't going to let him perform. And it's just all these things. And then he just posted this video of some crowd work that he had done, several weeks before, because that's just what he would do. Like on occasion, he would post videos to TikTok, and then it goes viral. Next thing you know, he's like one of the biggest comedians in the world.
I mean,
he's making like 25 million a year or something like that.
He's so big. My sister Charmaine, she's not into comedy at all, and she the other day was like, "Have you heard of Matt Rife?" And I'm like, "Okay, if it's reached Charmaine, he's huge."
But you had that moment. So tell us a little bit about what that's like when because you're learning how to do TikTok. Your nephew's trying to show you and all this, and and at the same time, this Trump thing is happening with pandemic, and you post, and what happens from the perspective of just a regular person, relatively anonymous, to you having your own Netflix show, months later? What was that like?
It was such a whirlwind. The first video going viral and getting millions. I've gone viral before, and I thought it was the same thing. I was like, oh, this is 10 tricks to appear smart meetings. It'll go viral. Maybe I'll get something out of it, but it's not going to change my life. And then, when I kept making the videos and they kept going viral, and my ex-husband, Jeff, would, help me track how many views each things were getting. We would, he set up this whole system to see like who was retweeting me. And, it was very exciting. Every time I made a video, it was just this like moment of just like, ooh, this is exciting. I'm sharing this and see how well it does, see what people say. And I love seeing how people were responding to it. And then, certain things started to happen. I was walking around the neighborhood and somebody drove by and yelled out, "Look, it's Trump." And I was like, oh, that's weird. And then a few weeks later, I got recognized by this little girl, while walking my dog. And that's when it was like, oh, I'm being recognized on the street by strangers. So that was a little bit different. I'd been trying to get an agent. And finally, I had meetings with every agent. They all wanted to talk to me. I'd been wanting to audition. Finally, I had all these auditions. It just built up until, I'm talking to Natasha Lyonne and Maya Rudolph, and I'm like, let's do a Netflix special. And they're like, and I'm like, okay, I think I was sort of just, looking back, and especially now knowing how hard the business is, I don't know why, but everything was just popping. It was just popping. Things were just happening. So it was like things were just like handed to me. It was wild. I became a white dude. I became Trump basically, because you know what I mean? I all of a sudden people were just like, here, have everything. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. But I think I did take it for granted a bit, because it was just like, I don't know how things work. So I just thought, oh, this is how things work. You go viral, everything's great.
How were you looking at it spiritually? Were you thinking, oh, I manifested this and I thought about it, and vision boards and the law of attraction? Was any of that coming into your internal dialogue of this is meant to be, or did you just think it was just luck?
The only thing was, and I write about it in the book, is that I've been lip syncing since I was little, because I wanted to sing. And so I was singing in church, and my mom was like, just the words. Like, she told me to mouth the words because I had such an awful voice, I guess. And so lip syncing was something that I did because I couldn't sing. And then sort of the making fun of the businessman, the businessman who's full of shit, like 100 Tricks to Appear Smart Meetings. That's all that is. And so looking back, the nodding, yes. And Steve Jobs talks about this, how you connect the dots looking back. And I kind of did that. I was just like, oh, why have I not been making fun of him this whole time? And actually, I was just pissed because 100 Chicks came out 2 weeks before he was elected. And so I'm not saying that 100 Chicks would have been huge had he not been elected, but all of my press got ruined because of him. And so I did feel a little bit, okay, I'm getting him back for that a little bit. But yeah, it wasn't spiritual. I wasn't feeling very spiritual. I was feeling Jeff and I were having even more problems at that point. So I was sort of managing that, and also trying to oh yeah, no big deal. I'm talking to John Hamm, no big deal. I was trying to just be cool. I was trying to be as cool as possible. And so I would say that maybe I was as disconnected from myself as I had ever been, because all of these huge things were happening to me, and I was just trying to be cool about it, when really I think about it now and it's like, wow, I can't believe that all of that happened.
Yeah, I love that part of the book. And I think this could also be very helpful for people. You talk about how you were basically Jeff's wingman, during your relationship together. And then you started getting all this attention, and then he started kind of questioning, have you changed? But you were just trying to navigate all of this and being in the spotlight, and then having to kind of rise up to meet that demand. So, what sort of reflections do you have now that could help someone else, another woman who's in that position, who's kind of, being the good wife and the good, whatever, homemaker and with her hobbies, but then those hobbies start to get traction and in a big way. And so now she's got to really step up and,
yeah,
make people feel supported in the way that she felt supported. But I don't know, what was that like, navigating all of that?
It was tough. It was tough being like, yeah, no big deal. To him, I had to sort of minimize. And I would love to talk to more of the men, and be like, hey, be supportive, whether it's a man or a woman or whatever. But a lot of times your dreams start to come true, and your partner or your friends, they don't like the new you maybe, or they want you to not change. And I get that, and I feel that too. I mean, I feel that so much. It's like a deep, deep feeling of, I don't want to leave anybody behind. I don't want to change. I don't want to move on. I love my friends. I love my family. And you're not and you're not like leaving them, but you are changing, and change, I think, is really good. Change is a sign that you're human. And so I feel like in any relationship, for me, being able to be excited for that change and not be threatened by it. And be with someone who is going to be excited for you. I think as much as I love Jeff and as much as I loved a lot of my friends at the time, um, there were people that it was hard for them to be excited for me, and whether they knew it or not, it was hard for me to be as excited as I wanted to be, in a lot of ways. And so, there's fair weather friends who are only there when things are good, but there's also friends who only like you when you need help or, things aren't going great. And so you need a friend who's going to be there when things are great and when things are not so great. Both of those times are important times to have people in your corner.
How did your friendships evolve during that period for you, that 2020, 2021 period where you were getting all that attention? Did your friendship circle get smaller? Did you have those people coming into your life who really hadn't really been there before?
Yeah, I mean, I started to make friends with more artists, and it's such a different world, the corporate world versus entertainment, and the people you meet, and also like how you show up. Like, I feel like in the corporate world, I could fake a lot of things, and in entertainment, you can't. You got to be genuine. You got to be a real person.
What do you mean by
And
that? You could fake versus being real.
so, you could go to a meeting and nod. You can go to a meeting and pretend like you were paying attention.
Mhm.
You could say, sorry, I forgot your name. Who cares? You could, it's just so easy to phone it in
Mhm.
the corporate world. And I'd been phoning, I was phoning it in so many of my relationships. And when I started to meet more people who weren't phoning it in, who were living their truth and their lives the way that they wanted to, and they were dedicated to what they were doing and they had their purpose figured out, it was a shock to my system of just like, oh, I don't actually have that figured out about myself. And in the process of figuring it out, there are people. I actually had a friend group that I found that was like very, very supportive of me through my divorce, through all of that. And then I started to meet more people who were kind of living their lives in alignment and living like true, authentic lives, and kind of gravitate towards them because that's where I want to be. That's kind of what I want to live. And so I'm also it's not like you're leaving people behind, but you need different people to feed different parts of you. And so I had to kind of realize that.
Mhm.
And also I'm just like
And
really, I feel weird talking about it because I feel bad about it. I do. I there are friends that I think I probably didn't show up for as much as I should have. Um, and because I was so obsessed with a lot of the things that were going on with me. And also, I think there's a whole movement online right now to be like, oh, boundaries, and oh, like, if people trigger you or if people like don't do what you like, just like cut them out of your life. And there's a lot of movement towards like, oh, embracing your introversion and all that stuff. And I'm not about that anymore at all. Like if you trigger me, that's my thing. And I want to figure out why you trigger me, and you're going to help me because you've triggered me. Like, that's going to help me figure out something about myself. And thank you for triggering me. I don't believe anymore in cutting people out and leaving people behind and any of that. It's just that people are there for different seasons and different reasons. And see, I'm a poet now, but yeah. And so I've had so much learning to do when it comes to relationships. I really have.
I've got a theory about this, right? And I've talked about this before on different episodes of this podcast, but my theory is that there is no such thing as like a toxic person or toxic dynamic, provided that you honor each dynamic's expiration time. So kind of like milk, like you don't drink milk after the expiration date.
Yeah.
Your dynamic with a friend or a relative might be great for an hour or two, but then if you try to spend 3 hours with them, it starts getting toxic and they start triggering you and you start triggering them. And the mistake we make is thinking, oh, that person is a toxic person, but really all it means is you exceeded the expiration time. So everybody's great for a certain amount of time. Like for instance, my mom, she's great, for a few hours, but if I spend more than that around her, she's going to start giving me unsolicited advice. She's going to start telling me how to drive. She's going to start saying things, trying to, tell me the correct way to wash dishes. And it just gets under my skin and I start to get into the story of, oh, she's this or that kind of person. She's controlling, da, da, da. No, I just spent too much time with her. I just have to be aware of that. And then when I feel that expiration time has been reached, take a little break, take a little space. Let me step out, or just not plan to spend as much time around those particular people. Some people you can spend all day with and it's great. Some people you can spend only 30 minutes around and it's great. And then if you exceed that, then it's going to be a problem.
I disagree.
You disagree?
Yeah.
Oh, tell me more. We've exceeded our time together. Sarah.
Yes. You know what? Time's up.
In the podcast.
But like,
no, tell me, challenge me on it because I need to.
Yeah. What is your mom triggering in you? What is she doing to you? What is it feeling like? Why is she doing that? Like, what is it saying? Like, it's an opportunity to learn. There are certain things about my mom. Like you asked before about like, oh, your parents are going to read the book. No, they're not. My mom, isn't going to read the book. She'd stand it. It's fine. But that was a huge thing of just like, oh, she doesn't really want to know everything. She's not, I always thought my mom was my best friend. And I realized no, she's my mom. She wants me to be happy. If I have a bad set, I tell her I had a great set because that's what she wants. That's as much as she can sort of take. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But, I talked to my dad yesterday. I've lived here in this apartment almost 3 years. Since my divorce, he hasn't visited. He hasn't come to visit. And so I'm like, Dad, I want you to come next year. And he's like, I don't know. And I felt it in my heart. I was like, ouch, he's really not going to come visit me, is he? He's really not going to come. But I just had to be like, what is that? Why is that rejection hurt so much? Like, what is it saying about me? Like, cause I feel that too when I get on stage and I don't get a laugh. So I can make that connection and I can learn about it and figure out how to get through it instead of avoiding it. Because avoiding it is actually not helping me in my life.
Yeah, I think what we all want ultimately is to be ourselves, right? And
we do.
They want to be themselves. We want to be ourselves. Nobody wants to be psychoanalyzed. No one wants to be told that they're not doing what they should be doing, et cetera, et cetera. And I guess the way I've kind of coped with that, because I've kind of, I have similar stories that I could point out in my relatives. None of my family's read any of my books.
Oh my God, solidarity.
But I realized that's just that, that's just how it is. At least for me, that's just how it's been. So I can allow myself to get
frustrated. But it doesn't trigger you. Does it trigger you?
No, it doesn't trigger me. It doesn't trigger me.
I feel like that's healthy. That's healthy when something doesn't trigger you.
It helps me to adjust my expectations around it so that when I am around them, I can actually extend the expiration time a little bit more because I'm not expecting them to show up in the way that I show up.
Exactly.
Right. And honestly, and actually my mom taught me this because she used to volunteer to help out this woman who just nobody really wanted to be around because she was so annoying. But my mom said something really profound one day. She said, I'd rather be the person who's choosing to be around the annoying person than be the annoying person that nobody wants to be around.
Yeah, of course.
And so, it's.
I think about that with my ex-husband sometimes. Like I know that he was a very confrontational person. He sort of liked the confrontation and I hated the confrontation. And so he would create a confrontation and my immediate response was, I'm sorry, my fault. I'm sorry. It's okay. I'm sorry. And I thought I was
Were you being facetious, or were you genuinely saying, I'm sorry, it's my fault?
okay. So I wasn't being facetious, but I was trying to cut off communication. I didn't realize that just apologizing immediately actually does create a wall. I was creating a wall and trying to just move. I thought I was doing a good thing by trying to move past the confrontation.
Right.
But what I was doing was trying to ignore the confrontation, get rid of it as quickly as possible. And so that was my thing. Like, sometimes I'll just apologize to get out of something. Sometimes I'll just start asking you questions so you don't have to ask me a question. And I have to notice these things about myself when I'm trying to not engage and not really connect and not really feel where you are and not really maybe avoid feeling it in myself. I'll do these things that I think are really good, but they're actually creating a wall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I'll also look back. I mean, just reflecting back on your story, I'll look back and I'll say, well, yes, they're not coming by your place. Yes, they're not reading your book, but they did let you stay at their
Exactly.
house.
Yeah.
And, you could probably, if you really put your attention on it, you could think of a million things that they have done that
Absolutely.
has been
Material.
what they felt they could do to show up.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of humans, is we're all diverse in that way. We all do what we feel we can do to show up.
I know. And that was another huge realization, is a lot of times, like, you blame someone or you crucify someone for something they actually don't have control over. They actually don't. That they're just doing the best that they can with what they have. I realized in my marriage, I didn't look under the hood with Jeff. I really didn't. There are a lot of red flags, and red flags are a funny joke, but they're also real. Like, that I ignored because I just wanted to get married. I was 35. It was too late. I had to do it. I had to do the thing. And so that was my bad. I said, I'll love you. I'll be with you forever. But the thing is, did I really know myself? Did I really take the time to figure out what I actually wanted and who I was? No. But I was doing the best I could with what I had at the time and what I thought I needed.
That's what I love about writing books, having to organize your thoughts and put it all out there and just see, okay, where does this fit?
Mm-hmm.
How does this connect to what I experienced earlier? Because like I said, you and I had that conversation back on episode 37, but then reading your book, I heard stories that I did a fair amount of research the first time, but there were things you didn't really talk about that I thought, how did this not come up in our first conversation together?
Oh, really? Like what?
I mean, there were so many things, so many like little things. Cause I like the little things. I like the mortar in between the bricks, moments,
Mm-hmm.
but just little things like, you consider yourself to be a consensus builder back when you were at Google, and how that could have informed your path. Or I didn't know you worked at Yahoo and then you quit that and then got to Google and then you quit that. Like, I thought you only had one job that you quit. And,
Yeah.
but that's what we do. Like when we tell our stories, having not written them down, we form composites because it's just easier. I don't have to get into all these little details, but when you write it down, you're actually encouraged to get into the details, at least to kind of find the through line and the narrative. And so what was that process of writing all of your memoir? What did you discover about yourself or your story or your journey through that? I'm imagining it was like a 6 month plus long process.
Oh yeah. It was over a year. And a lot of the things I'd written before, like some of the things I'd written when I was 30. Yes, so many connections that I made that I never made before. Like the ficus that I threw in the dumpster in San Francisco, and it took me several times reading that to realize how close ficus and fetus are. It's two very close words, and it's just so funny that someone discovered it and someone gave me a hard time about doing it, but it was a plant. Don't ever throw a plant in the dumpster in San Francisco because you will be crucified for that. I have to say, like, the biggest thing that when I read it was like, wow, I was obsessed with powerful men. I wrote about men a lot. I wrote about powerful men a lot and my obsession with powerful men. And that's, that was the big thing. It was like, oh my God, I never thought I had daddy issues, but I do. Like I was obsessed with my dad and making him laugh. I was obsessed with Trump and I was trying to figure out how to, get at him. I was obsessed with finding a man who could make me feel like I was powerful. Um, you know, obsessed with so many men and then getting to the end and being like, oh, I need to find that power inside of myself. Like that's what I've always been looking externally. How many views, how many likes, how many shares, like all of this stuff to tell me how great I am or how much power I have or how much success I have when actually that shouldn't be the thing that makes you think you're powerful or makes you think you can do whatever you want to do. So that was a big realization for me. And I felt kind of ashamed of it. I was just like, why am I talking about men so much? But in our society, and men are, that's, and for women, like as a child, I would practice writing my name with somebody else's name. My name wasn't good enough, and little girls everywhere are conditioned to believe that the thing you need to do is get married and get a husband. And we all think we've gotten so far ahead of that story, but we really haven't. There's most women still believe that that's the thing that you need to do and need to get. And I will say that I'm not looking for a relationship now. And I feel very empowered about being someone who isn't really searching for that anymore, but it's only because I did it. It's only because I actually did it. And so now I can move past it. If I had never been married, I'd still be looking to get married probably.
What is the illusion that you think a lot of, just say women have who are not married, who are fantasizing about that? Like in your experience, having been married twice.
Thank you for reminding everybody. Um,
And now enjoying living on your own, you say multiple times in the book.
yeah, I really do. Well, for me and I think what I see is it's this competition. I see a lot of competition between women of just like, it's the Instagram picture,
Uh-huh.
Which my nails are terrible right now. Checking the box, get married, have a baby, get a house. It's just, so many women are just like, let me do it all, get married, buy the house, or try to have a baby, try to have another baby. It's just this thing that they feel like they need to check those boxes. And I feel like some women really want that. And some men really, really want that. But some of us don't. And it's so hard to tell the difference. It really is because society supports one of those things really well and it doesn't support the other thing very well. And so you go for the thing that everybody's telling you to do and telling you that's going to make you happy. And it's going to, I don't know, you're going to get to have a party. You're going to have all your friends know that you're married now. I also felt when I was married, like, oh, that's settled. I don't have to worry about that anymore. I can focus on this now. It was a checkbox. It literally was a checkbox. Mm-hmm. And I think for a lot of people, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. All right. So just looking at that framework, talk about your newfound, connections and success in Hollywood and all of that. What is that like on the other side of the sort of virality that you experienced now that we're in 2023 and you're best friends with Jerry Seinfeld and all
that? Yeah, right. Cool. No, not at all. Success came to me. I just remember this one thing. I was on set with Jerry Seinfeld. It was like my last day. He looks at me. He's just like, you kind of became a success overnight. And I was like, yeah. And he's just like, it's not an easy thing to do or not an easy thing to be or something like that. He just is like, he said it was not a walk in the park, or something like that. And I just kind of laughed at it and I didn't really think about it. But then now, I don't want to be a person that is successful through shortcuts. So
Mhm.
I've gotten to a place now where I look at it like, wow, that was really great that that happened. But if I really want long-term success, it's going to be work. It's going to take years, and I got to be in it for the long haul. I think when you do get viral success like that, you can start to get seduced into thinking it's that easy, and nothing is that easy. And so right now for me, it's about how do I build relationships with someone who I respect and admire as much as Jerry Seinfeld, so that I can have a mentor, so that I can get to the next level, so that I can have a long lasting career, or else I'm going to have to move back in with my parents.
Seeing as how TikTok was so good to you, I'm curious, what's your social media platform of choice these days?
Um, and of
Like,
course,
yeah,
Elon Musk. Hello. I just love Twitter. No, Twitter got ruined. So like, I'm not on Twitter anymore, even though I have
you're
so
not on
many.
Twitter?
I am, but it's just like, it's just a hellscape right now. It's just a hellhole. It's awful. I hate
But
it.
hasn't it always kind of had that bit of a toxic vibe
It's
to it?
gotten worse and worse and worse over time. But yeah, you're right. It has always been a bit toxic.
And I feel like it's perfect for you though. Just those pithy one-liners, deep in my head right now, self-awareness.
Yeah, that's why I've been trying
I've gotten to the
threads.
point in writing where what did you say that one time? I've gotten to the point in writing where I'm questioning if I forget what it was. It was so amazing though. Do you remember? I
I'm
got
getting to the point where writing where I'm questioning what.
I'm questioning what writing even is or something like that. I don't know. It was a
Sounds
very
like some.
Sarah Cooperism.
Yeah, I love those short things, and I'm trying threads now because of
Uh-huh.
that, and it's kind of fun. Um, yeah, Instagram, threads, TikTok.
So no videos. You're not really doing videos right now.
Well, I'm doing stand-up comedy, and I'll be like sharing clips of that, and I'm gonna be um, you
That's the
know,
thing with comedians, right? You
yeah,
gotta do the crowd work. You gotta share the
yeah,
clips.
yeah, and it's actually really great because that muscle of being in front of an audience and thinking on your feet, like that's like I said, that's the holy grail for me is being on that stage and being myself. And so I don't want to give up on that.
Are you doing the Andrew Schultz and bringing a whole film crew every time you go to perform and
Oh,
cutting it up and
no.
making the reels and being very intentional about it?
No, I'm working on material, and if crowd work happens, it happens, and if it doesn't, it doesn't.
But are you recording it? Like, how are you
Well,
capturing it?
a lot of the clubs just record automatically. So I
Okay.
don't have to do anything other than show up and then get the clip, and then I have to caption it, which is annoying. But yeah,
Are you
I
able to get on at pretty much any club you turn up to nowadays?
no, no. I actually because I've spent so much time doing other things this year, like, I did the play, I wrote this book, like I'm rusty as hell with stand up right now. So I've just started performing again, and I'm just, trucking along.
What are your go-to venues in New York?
New York Comedy Club, Eastville, West Side Comedy Club.
And do you have
Oh,
a
good.
routine where every Friday people can potentially see you at
Uh, well,
one of those venues?
yeah. I mean, if you check the schedules of those, you'll see when I'll be performing. But it's like kind of a weekly thing of just, when you go up, they set the schedule. It's kind of like working at any kind of place. They tell you when to show up each week.
Are you going to be
Yeah.
performing tonight?
Not tonight. I'll be performing tomorrow night at West Side Comedy Club.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Back to where it all started. I love it.
Kind of pretty much. Yeah. It's all full circle with me.
And last question, how are you thinking about success these days? Now
Um,
that you've had, success in a material sense, in a romantic sense for a period of time, and, just all the things that people you look at as boxes that they need to check.
um,
A book.
yeah, it's just about consistent work, consistently putting stuff out, and um, yeah, consistent income, consistent work. That's success to me. Uh, I'm hoping that I can do this for the rest of my life. And that just means that I just got to be consistent about it.
Mhm. Beautiful. Well, Foolish is the book.
It
Sarah
is.
Cooper is the guest. The Light Show is the podcast.
Light, thank you so much for letting me be on your podcast again, a second time guest. It's very special. And I hope you are going to be in New York sometime.
Yeah. Thank you for accepting the invitation. And I will definitely let you know when I'm in the city again. I want to see you perform. Never seen you perform live. But
yeah, you should come.
That would be a box that I would love to check one day.
If you like that video, you're going to love the next one. Click this thumbnail right here, and I'll see you over there.